Hello everyone and welcome to the spawning pit. Right, so on to the painting tutorial. We're going to be going with a very standard sort of color scheme with this, so we're going to start by priming with Xandri dust to save us some time, because my goal is to show you a very fast sort of painting tutorial, something that's easy to do and something that anyone should be able to do. Although I do apologize for the rotational shot because it's all cattywampus, and yeah, I need to figure out a better way to do it, because this was literally the best shot I could get, which is embarrassing. But anyway, after Xandri dust, we're going to go with Ogren camo. So we're going to be going about this a very specific sort of way. We're going to be going at a 45-degree angle. I believe this is called zenithal highlighting, where your base color will be only in the darkest shadows, your mid-tone will be at 45 degrees and at 90, and then your topmost layer is going to be at only 90. And for the topmost layer, we are going to go with Flayed One Flesh. For the metal, I ended up going with a Warp Lock Bronze. You can use whatever metal you want to. Typically, people use copper or something along those lines, but this is supposed to go along with my Death Guard army too, so I feel like it fits. Although you will notice that as I'm spraying the Warp Lock Bronze on, that it will pool on the surface and it will sort of avoid the edges. This is a bit of a happy accident because later on I'll be edge highlighting, and this kind of sets me up for that. I plan to go with a rusty metal sort of effect, so for the base of that I'm using the pig iron from P3. Move your fingers out of the way, you fool! For part of the skin tone and for the bones, I ended up using Rakarth Flesh as the base. The reason why I'm kind of edge highlighting the fleshy bits there is because I'm trying to do sort of gradient from the green flesh into like a more inflamed looking thing, like an open wound, that sort of thing. There's nothing really super special going on here. This is just going to take a while. Asshole, move your fingers. Thank you. Next time I think I should use like Screaming Bell or something, mostly because funny, but I used Balthazar Gold to establish the kind of copper color for the bells. And it looks like I'm pointing out that I forgot to do the little hanging head there back when I was doing the Rakarth Flesh. I used my own mixture for the wounds that he has in there, the little gashes. if you were to try to make an equivalence between it and GW's brand, I'd say that it's pretty close to the old Mornfang Brown, but it's slightly darker. I mostly like it because it ends up being this like almost like dried blood color, so, and it's fitting for like wounds and stuff like that. Again, I use my own mixture of paint, but the equivalence between it and GW is a little easier than the other one. It basically is just dried bark. A good wash to use for the classic color scheme of the Plaguebearers is Athonian Camo Shade. What you want this to do is to tint the entire skin tone towards darker green, because right now, as you can see, it's all like mostly tan-ish. You also want to avoid any of the parts that we had just painted Rakarth flesh a while back. If you don't, it's not really that big of a deal, mostly because it is a dirty zombie. This is kind of the reason why I picked this model, because at no point during this process of painting this mini do you really need to be super careful about where you're putting pigment. I do quite like the quick shade washes, so we're going to be using strong tone on the bones. You can see that the previous wash is still wet, and that is because I am not a huge believer of waiting until each wash is dry before you put on the next wash, because it's going to naturally blend together as you're washing each color. I think it ends up with a better effect, especially on a model like this that's supposed to be dirty. Our next wash is red tone. As it says on there, is basically just Carver Crimson. We're going to be putting this on all the fleshy bits that we previously painted Rakarth flesh, and we're also going to be putting it on the gums of the mouth on the stomach, and the wounds that we painted beforehand. And yeah, I'm trying to cut out all the parts where I go hunting or where I'm just loading up my brush. This is purple tone. Its equivalent is Druchii Violet, as it says. Then we're going to be doing this over all the parts that we just did with Carberg Crimson. The reason is that we don't want it to just look inflamed. We also want it to look bruised. So I'm a derp. I ended up doing a bunch of stuff without recording it because I forgot to hit the record button. Yeah. Anyway, so all I did, I dry brushed Pallid Witch flesh onto the flesh, and I think that's it. Though at that point, I think you could stop if you're doing a lot of these guys, but I'm going to go a bit further. I used Brass Scorpion to edge highlight the Warp Block Bronze metal that I did earlier, and you can kind of see what I was getting at before, where the edges are already lighter than everything around it. So you don't actually need to do this step. I just do it of the completionist in me. Really, you could just say that we're adding metallic flakes to the colored edges already, because of how thin I've made the pigment at this point, because I think I watered it down 3-to-1 water to paint. So to anyone that doesn't know, Edge highlighting metal is really annoying, so that's why I'm saying, like, if you don't feel like doing it, don't fucking do it. I wanted to get the pimples on him to stand out a little bit more, and to do this I used Everland Sunset to gently get the tops of the pimples. I actually really like how it turned out and how it looks on the video as I'm doing it. I do kind of wish that I had just left it at this point instead of going about doing a couple more steps. Officially, this is where I'd say I recommend that you'd stop, like, here. What I said before about not wanting to go any further or wishing that I hadn't, it's because of this step. Looking back, I wish I hadn't done it. The idea was to make it more inflamed looking, just more kind of reddish, but I'm realizing now that by doing that, I'm taking away from the yellow of the pimples, the flesh tone. So, yeah, I guess I learned a little bit. This step I actually really like that I did. This is one that I'd say is well worth the time and effort that you put into doing it. The reason being is that Nailac Oxide gives bronze tones or copper tones a really nice worn look to it, and it goes well with the overall paint scheme. This is just the finishing touches on the eye. All I'm doing is putting a little bit of really watered down warpstone glow on the raised part of the eye. This is the same palette witch flesh that I used for my dry brush earlier with the footage that I accidentally cut out. It's another one of these paints that is my own mixture, and I'm just doing the final touch-ups on the pimples, which, just like the eye, is just the most raised part of the pimples. Because it wasn't a huge part of the model, I only decided to do one step for the leather, and that was mostly because there wasn't much to it aside from it serving as contrast. Again, this is one of my own mixtures. It's more of a purpley brown tone, and I really like it. I used Rizza Rust for the finishing touches on the rust effect. Personally, I think I probably tend to go too heavy with pigment while dry brushing. I don't know, it works for me. You may want to go lighter if you want. Again, here's a point where I was dumb and lost a little bit of footage. Essentially all it was that I was applying the Sterling Ballymire with a, like, dirty old brush. I'd highly recommend getting one of the little scrapers from GW for that stuff, because it applies way better with it. After that, you can paint the rim whatever color you want. Really, it's, in my opinion, painting the rim is really inconsequential, so I don't feel like I need to show you that. There is a couple more steps you can take for the basing. You can put Caliban green and then put Nurgle's rot over that, and it'll look like putrid puddles or of like vomit or whatever. The only reason why I'm not going to be doing it with this one is because of how the basing ended up drawing, where it was super light and very much flat. And with that, it is the end of my painting tutorial. I do commission business, so my contact information will be in the description. And if you're interested, please contact me, and we can work something out. And most of all, thank you for watching.